Beacon Press Audio presents A Life Beyond Reason, A Father's Memoir by Chris Gabbard. This audiobook is narrated by Jeff Zinn, published by Beacon Press Audio, 2019. 1. "My wife's ready to give birth," I said meekly. "Where are the doctors?" On the other side of the high counter at the nurse's station, a middle-aged blonde woman was standing and gazing at a computer screen. When I approached, she looked up and said, "May I help you?" The clock on the wall behind her read 3:23. It was the morning of March 5th. It was nearly spring in a more innocent time. At the close of trading that day, the NASDAQ would reach halfway to its .com peak. I was still using a Palm Pilot. Everyone was switching from Alta Vista to Google. In 3 months, Napster would launch. In 5 months, Blogger. In 9 months, we'd be partying like it was 1999, which it actually already was, not to mention freaking out about Y2K. But the world was about to change. In 18 months, there would be .com, .shit, .gone. And in 30 months, the Twin Towers would fall. But for now, from San Francisco and Cupertino to the Silicon Gulches, canyons, flats, and knolls across the nation, visions of a glorious, high-tech future and the wealth it would create danced in people's heads. Nothing but good could come from the technology revolution. Many in the Bay Area and beyond dreamed this dream. On March 5th, 1999, a share of the Hippocrates Corporation of America, a pseudonym, the biggest manufacturer of medical devices in the United States, trading symbol HIPC, opened nearly $2 over its previous day's opening. This company was the Apple computer of the healthcare industry, merging digital technology with medicine. The darling of Wall Street, Hippocrates was revolutionizing the way doctors treated patients. Quarterly reports indicated robust sales for its wonder drug Relaxinoid, a pseudonym, used to treat spasticity of cerebral palsy, and its implantable drug infusion pump, the Relaxinoid pump, and other digital medical devices were generating astronomical profits. Owning a few shares ourselves, my wife Eileen and I loved the growth of the stock price, not realizing that our son, soon to be born, would one day have one of the company's devices implanted in his body. The nurse looked up briefly. "Everyone's giving birth," she replied. Fecundity evidently wasn't confined to the stock market. "Will the doctors be coming soon? They're very busy." "Oh, I'm sure they are," I said apologetically. "I wouldn't want to trouble them, but I just want them to know that my wife is ready." "Ready?" "To give birth," I said, clarifying. She looked at me quizzically. "It depends on what you mean by ready." Deciding not to debate the matter further, she continued, "I'll let them know. They'll be along. Don't worry." Since she didn't ask me which doctors were ours or even who I was, I continued. "Dr. Lachasik is the attending physician. Dr. Atropsky is the resident. I'm Gabbard. My wife is Chazen. We're in suite 1524. She looked up again. "They'll come when they can." Then, giving me an encouraging wink before returning to her screen, she added, "They'll get that baby out in no time." I left the nurse's station and began looking for someone, anyone, to draw attention to our situation. I really wanted to find a doctor. In 4 months, I would become one myself. But I wasn't going to become that kind of doctor. I was just finishing my doctoral study at Stanford, focusing on the British literature of the Enlightenment and getting ready to look for a teaching job. Of all the advice one of my dissertation advisors gave me, this was the best. Never reserve a table at a restaurant in the name of Dr. Gabbard. You may find yourself in an embarrassing situation. What he meant was, if somebody were to go into cardiac arrest, it wouldn't help much to be a doctor of the epistolary novel. The epistolary novel, fiction consisting of collections of letters, was a mainstay of the Enlightenment. This was not the Enlightenment of the Buddha, but the European Enlightenment of the 18th century, the movement that ushered in our modern, globalized world. I studied it in addition to the novel. Graduate students writing their dissertations, as I was doing during that period of my life, often become obsessed with their subjects. I tended to frame everything around me in terms of the Enlightenment and viewed all forms of progress as its legacy. In other words, I saw modern times as an extension of the Enlightenment. Think of the voice of Rod Serling of The Twilight Zone saying, "Imagine, if you will, a world in which the Enlightenment never ended." Nothing epitomized the Enlightenment's lingering influence more than American medicine. This institution was the pinnacle of progress, a field where the application of human reason operated in its purest and most practical form. The Baconian empirical method incarnate, it had evolved exponentially over the preceding 2 centuries. Anesthesia, penicillin, polio vaccines, laparoscopic surgery, mapping of the human genome, and progress against cancer. Birth had been made easier. In 1821, the Vicomte de Kergaradec was the first practitioner to recommend assessing fetal heart sounds for diagnostic purposes. And in 1853, William John Little was the first to argue that cerebral palsy stemmed from a lack of oxygen at birth. Given the centuries of linear progress and exponential medical advancement, no problem should arise regarding the simple matter of delivering a baby. The trouble was, a problem had come up, but no one seemed to be available to deal with it. I turned corners, walking up one corridor of the 15th floor where the maternity ward was located, and down another. The corridors were empty, yet the walls hummed with life. No doctor, nurse, or aide crossed my path, so I gave up the search. I had that feeling you get when you can't find your car keys. I headed back to the delivery suite, where Eileen and our friend Joanne were waiting. When I walked back into the suite, it was 3:25 a.m., and the only people there were Eileen and Joanne. 39 hours earlier, on March 3rd, Joanne had made a comically grand entrance. She had barged into the birth suite exuberantly roaring, "Whoopee!" and immediately followed this up with an even more exclamatory, "Childbirth!" Midday Wednesday, Eileen and I were still fresh and able to laugh, having arrived just a few hours earlier. Joanne Sasaki was a few years younger than Eileen and worked with her many floors below at Loma Prieta Medical Center, a pseudonym. Like Eileen, she was a clinical professor of physical therapy. Joanne had short black hair, obsidian eyes, and a mischievous grin. She was Nisei. When dressed in her professional attire, she had a lot of tattoos that didn't show. She called Eileen Crunchy and me Cowboy. Joanne was a hipster from our irony-rich neighborhood, our enclave of cheeky bohemian iconoclasts. She loved to talk about the internal workings of the body. She did this in ways that were so spiced with graphic detail that they made one feel a little queasy. One could be eating burritos with her, and she would launch into an anatomy lesson about the bowels, urinary tract, intestines, kidney, liver, or lungs. For this routine, she used a deadpan voice, stating in an expressionless monotone all of the things that could go wrong.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?